everyone. So today I'm going to show you how to put together my core communication flip book, and there are some steps to it, so I wanted to be able to show you the various stages of the steps. So when you print it out, you're going to have, this is going to be your main core vocabulary words, and you're going to have a whole bunch of fringe vocabulary. And you are also going to have your colors. And I always find the colors to be super useful, so I want to have access to them all the time. So there are outlines depending on your printer that may or may not fill your whole page. I had one printer, they filled my whole page, and one they did not. You're going to cut along those lines, and you're going to want to cut pretty carefully, because otherwise some of your pictures for your flipbook are going to not show up, or they'll have overlap on them, or something that, you know, you really didn't want. So I cut out my colors there, and then I would cut out my core communication board the same way. Now, you don't have to cut out this board, but if you want all the sizes to line up, it really is better to cut it out. But otherwise, just keep this one full page. This one's the least important to have with the right lines. Okay, I'm just going to cut out 3 sides of this, and then I would do the same here, and I would cut along the lines pretty carefully so I'd have all my fringe vocabulary. So let's pretend like we have finished that whole stage. Yes, it is a decent amount of cutting. Then I would laminate them all. Again, that's a pain in the bottom. I really don't like laminating, but you know, it makes it last a lot longer. Once you do that, there are different ways to assemble it into a book. So I'm going to show you first the ringed way. So I have my core board here. I have my colors board here. And then I've chosen some, but not all, of the fringe vocabulary that I want to use. I have put holes that line up for all of them, and I have them on 2 rings so that I can easily flip through them. And let's say I want to be using this board, so then I can be, I am sad, or I am so mad. And I can flip and use different fringe vocabulary. The nice part about this is that all the fringe vocabulary you're not using, you can have the holes already punched, and you can store them somewhere else, like in a binder or in a file folder, and just whip them out when you need those other fringe vocabulary and add them to the ring, and you're good to go. My favorite though, and this is not as convenient in terms of adding new fringe vocabulary, is to use the binding comb, which I have access to at my work. Love it because it just flips better. I have my fringe vocabulary up at the top. I decided this time to put them in alphabetical order, which I think was a really wise choice because I could never find my fringe vocabulary before. And then I have access to it easily with my fringe. I can still get my feeling words, my action words, any of that. It's fabulous. Now, you're wondering, what do I do with all the other fringe vocabulary that I have not chosen to put on here? Because trust me, you don't want to put all 16 of those fringe vocabulary things on here. It would be too thick and too confusing. So here's what I have done. I took those other fringe vocabulary. I added some of my favorite product ever, which is called Tack It, and it kind of acts like a Post-it note material. I added little tiny dabs on here. It's really small if you can't see it. And then what I did is I took them and I stuck them onto the boxes of the materials that they applied to. You don't have to put them there. I just think that's a lot easier. And now I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about blocks today. So I take my special fringe vocabulary, I stick it to the very top of my core communication board, and poof, I have extra fringe vocabulary. It's right on top. It's super easy to access. And when I'm done with it, my kiddo is not going to be talking about blocks when they go back to their classroom, because their classroom doesn't have any blocks. I can go and stick it right back on my Lego bin. Perfect. So I hope that's helpful. I love using the flip communication books. I use them all the time. I use them both with my kids who are non and minimally verbal. And this year I started using them with some of my kids that are really difficult to understand, very unintelligible. And it's been really useful for both sets of kids. So I hope that you find great success with it too. Thanks. Special added section. I was working with a kiddo who was very unintelligible, but I think is pretty good pre-reading skills. He's a kindergarten student, and he's shown some good capability to understand letters and sounds. And since I'm working on letters and sounds with him, I added an extra page for his core communication book. So it's an alphabet page, and I designed it to be the alphabet with the vowels on the side. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to laminate it. I'm going to have it at the back page of his core communication book. And so you can't really see it most of the time, but poof, it's there when we need it. So as he wants to read, he can point to the first letter that he is using in his words. And also, if I know the word that he's trying to say, I can point to it. So for example, he doesn't do any initial S's and S blends, and so it's really hard to understand it. But if I know he's actually trying to say school, I can find his alphabet page, I can point to the S and go, oh, you mean school, to give him an extra prompt so that as he gets better at his reading and phonics skills, he can use this to help become more intelligible to his classmates and his teacher. Okay, so that's my new addition for this. It's totally optional. If you have a kiddo who's not going to be a reader at all, you probably don't want to include this, but for some of my kiddos, this is going to be really useful.